Guys, tell me. I hope that you are doing well. Yes, the last week was a very tough week, and maybe the week before also. The problem with the last week was about the people who live here in the Fraser Valley. Most of either people they have to leave their home, or somebody else you have to. Even who doesn't, who the family that they stay at home, they still have shortage of some supply to their kids, to their family member. I hope that all of you who are here and who is going later to watch this video, you are okay. So yeah, and hope that all the highway later can maybe hope by the beginning of the next week that all the road will be open, that people that they can go ahead and go to their work and communicate with each other in a correct way. Yes, Firas, yes, it really was a crazy week because for families, it was not easy to get supplies. For example, the last week it is the first time we have to go ahead for the canned food and to cook using canned food. And I think that the positive point that the different farmers here, they have to provide free milk. I'm talking about Chilliwack. I don't know other cities how it was, because there was no transportation. So if the people here who live in this community doesn't go ahead and consume this, it will be spoiled. And it was a good point that that most of the farmers also in this way, they help the community, especially with the family. So they have to provide milk, and some of them provide eggs also. Hope we will not see this images again. And I know that it's not easy to somebody to leave his or her home, the family, when they have to leave their home, even though they will be secure, but they will not feel safe or comfortable if they will be so far from their own home. This is human being. We always be somehow connected to our home, even though it is a home, not just a place. It's more emotional. So hope all of you are safe and you're doing good. What about you, Kevin? How was your week?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah, it was pretty rough. I live in Outer Grove, and just a park piece of road on my above was just floating, and we couldn't get out. That's it. And I had a midterm as well. That's it.
Yeah, the midterms all were shifted. Yeah, so the deadline.
Was shifted. Yeah, it was meant to be on last week, but we move it to this week.
So and yeah, now you are at your home and somehow everything okay?
Yeah, everything's fine now.
Yeah, they this week also we have a heavy raining, so I hope that we will not have another flooding this week also here in the Fraser Valley.
Hopefully, yeah.
Thank you, Kevin. What about you, Mison? How it was? Can you hear us, Mison? Okay, Mitch, how it was?
Hello.
Go ahead, Mison. Yeah.
Yeah. No, actually, I just arrived from Dubai last week, so I was actually staying in Vancouver.
Okay, I see. So
yeah.
Where do you live normally? In Vancouver or here in the Fraser Valley?
Oh, no, I'm going to live in Abbotsford, but my brother lives here, so I was just staying here for a few days.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But the road from Vancouver to Abbotsford is open, yeah? So
yeah, I actually traveled one day. So right now, I think the road's closed right now, but like when I went, it wasn't closed.
Yeah, it was maybe they keep it only for the seasonal supply.
Yeah, maybe some
because
construction.
So far, yesterday I was at the superstore. I can see still there are some shortage. For example, yesterday there was no bread.
Yeah. Oh.
Yeah, so it seemed that because the road is not totally open, or maybe one line is open, so this is why
Yeah,
they
they
have
haven't
that,
opened all lanes. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I hope you will be back home soon, yeah?
Yeah, thank you.
Mitch, what about you? Can you hear us?
Yeah.
Yeah, so tell me, how was your experience the last week?
I went to grocery and everything was out of stock, so I had a rough weekend.
I see. So, and then how you have already managed it? How you can manage it in this way?
I had some of it, but otherwise, like I borrowed
Yeah.
it from my roommates. They like
Yeah,
they have like they have a their fridge in their room, so like
I
they
see.
stock like for 2-3 weeks together.
I see. Yeah, it was tough. It was, even though it was a new experience, and maybe this experience will let us learn some lessons how we can deal with such kind of situation.
Yeah.
However, it was a tough one, yeah. Shane, tell us about your experience.
Hi. Yeah. I live in Chilliwack as well. I live on the river,
I see.
but I live a little bit elevated, so I was actually out of the flood zone. I wasn't low enough, but a lot of my neighbors were evacuated. I had no power for 30 hours on like the Monday or whenever it initially happened. So yeah, I'm pretty sure that my experience would have been similar to yours with the food shortages and everything like that.
Yeah. By the way, based on this experience, so now me at home, I will have a minimum stock for canned food because it is my first year in Chilliwack, but it seems people they tell me that it is the first time happen like this. So I don't know. What have you been here a long time here in Chilliwack, Che?
Yeah, it's I've never had it. I think like I don't know, 15 years ago or something like that, there was a flood. It
Okay.
doesn't happen very often.
Hope will never happen again because there are some people they have already also lost their lives also who were at the road. I think 4 to 5 person now. Firas, tell us, you live maybe in Abbotsford or Chilliwack? I don't know. You live here in the Fraser Valley or where you live? Can you hear us, Firas? I don't know if Firas is hearing us. Andrew? Hi, you live in Abbotsford, okay.
Hello?
Yeah, go ahead. Tell us about your experience. Share it with us if you want.
Yeah, so I'm in Western Abbotsford, so thankfully I was relatively unaffected. Just found it really difficult to concentrate on pretty much anything this week. It's pretty chaotic.
Yeah. And what about the supplies? There was enough supply in the stores?
I didn't really notice issues with groceries or anything. We had enough food, thankfully.
I have some images here in Chilliwack. The last week there was pure empty shelves, and the gas station ran out of the gas. Maybe Chain also know about this. So and we were totally isolated from the other cities, but now it's better. Okay, guys, thank you so much for sharing these stories. Yeah, it's good that to hear what happened to each other, to share this. And again, as I said, I hope that it will never happen again. Hope so. So let's now talk about our calls. The good point that in our calls that at the beginning we were so fast. And this helped us in order that not to lose the expected outcome from this course, because now I think that this is this lecture 8 is chapter 11 in the book. So we are almost in a good track. As I said that from the beginning, I was somehow fast, then I realized I was fast, so I have to slow down. And maybe because I was somehow fast at the beginning, this helped us in the progress. I have already published assignment 3, individual assignment 3. And I canceled assignment 4. because I have already extended the deadline for assignment 3 because of about what happened the last week. And assignment 3 was more comprehensive. I didn't ask you to make a real case scenarios and design and analysis as we did before, because I have already published the project and I want you to focus more on the project. So the final assignment grade will be based on the 3 assignments that I have already sent. And we have the project, and then we will have the final one. So the final, and again, people they have already worked with the group work exercises. I always taking note for this bonus, and we will add them at the end for the assignment grade. So concerning the project, so the presentation of the project, it's very important. It is a must to have a presentation. The presentation, as I said in my email, either I will keep the stage open in the last week, which means that any group want to make a live presentation while I will be with them, go ahead and do it. Or you can, if you can join the last week, because most of you normally they can, a few people can join the live session because of their own timetable. So they can do a presentation internally and share with me the video later after they record this presentation. Why presentation? Somebody will ask why I'm asking you for presentation. There are more than one reason. First, I believe that if you have already done this work by yourself, so you are able to present it. Again, if you do this work by yourself, you didn't go ask somebody else to do it for you, or you go and search online to do it. So if you do it by yourself, means that you can make a good presentation for this. This is the first point. Second point. From the beginning, I told you that I am a guy that came from the academic and the industrial work. So I work in the industry and work in the academic life or in the academic institute. Like I have been university instructor for a long time, and at the same time I have to work as consultant in different firms before I come to Canada. So in different countries. So I can see that fresh graduate student, even though you can see that there are some fresh graduate student, they have a high mental capability and good personality. However, when you go ahead to make some interview with them as a first recruitment step, they can't present their knowledge in a good way. Maybe they can present themselves, but they don't present their knowledge. When I said their knowledge about what technically they know in this domain. Because students, they will focus more in any course they take it, how they will pass the exam. However, they don't go ahead and practice how they make a systematic way to make archiving for all knowledge in their mind. What I mean by archiving all knowledge in their mind, so each terms, each terminology, each abbreviation, what does it mean, and where to use it, in order that you have the best way to present a technical work. There is a huge gap with a student who this. For example, if you are going to learn a new language, sometimes you will use some words that people will be expert in this language will say for you, yeah, you can use this word here, but it is better to use another word because this will give the exact meaning comparing to this word. The same when you make a technical presentation. So I believe that it will be a good practice for you because we are talking about system analysis and design. So we are talking about the technical analysis about a system. We are not talking about programming. Maybe if you are talking about programming, so it will be an easy. Go ahead and double check the code and see what is the output. No, this is not an implementation course, and there will be no code in this course. So let's talk about more the technical and systematic way to make a system analysis and design based on the title of the course. So the presentation will be a good practice for you. To sum up about presentation, there will be a portion from the grade for the presentation, which means that the overall grade of the project, from this overall grade, there is a portion for the presentation. And all the team should participate in the presentation, which means that if you are aware, 4 or 5 persons, So the 4 or 5 persons should participate in this presentation. It's up to you how you manage it. I'm getting some emails from a student asking me some details about the project. I always am replying that it's your own project. Go ahead and see how you can do this. Don't ask me about it, because I want you to see what will be your output. So let my eyes be closed now till I see your output. So the presentation can be about 15 minutes, not more. I don't believe it should be more. Again, it's up to you how the duration, but if I will be in your situation, I will do it about 15 minutes. So this is the whole about the project. I hope that people who join us today and for other students who is going later to watch this recorded video, I clarify all the points and guidelines concerning project. Take care for the deadline. Let's return here now. So the last lecture we have talked about forms and report. We talked what is the difference between forms and report. Mean that forms is we can use it to make a data entry, that this data will go to the database system. As a report, we will retrieve data based on special queries from the user to see different data. And we talk about different report we will have it, and we discuss the guideline for designing a forms, a good forms and report. This is all was done in the last lecture. So, so the last lecture was focused more about the various screens that the user can see. When I talk about screen, a screen can be a form, it can be a report. And we can talk more about what we mean by screen today or what we mean by interface. So, however, today we will go more generic and more detailed in the same way, which means that we talked only about form and report. Today we will talk about the whole cycle, which means that this communication that hears this word, or this interaction between the user and the system, how it will be, what will be the back and forth in this case. So just not talk about a form and report. We will talk more about what different interaction we will have it and how this interaction can be done. And like always, this course is not, again, it's not a programming course. So we talk more about different guidelines and different tips, about and different, let's say, hints about how you are going to do this to have the best design as your customer expect. So today we'll talk what are the interfaces and dialogues. We'll talk more about what I mean by interfaces. So the form and report can be interface. The specification, how we can make specification with this interface. And we'll talk about different type of interaction, like menu, and we know so far the form, for example, before. But there are more interaction interfaces can be used. And how we can make this control user access or make validation for this data, how we can consider this concerning data entry, because in the data entry, we have to focus more about this, and we have to be sure about also the final, how to have this more the graphical user interface, which means adding different graphics for this to make it most friendly in this case. So from the first lecture in this course, we always talk that this course is based on the SDLC cycle. And based on the scope of the course, we are more interested here, because we talk about analysis and design, so planning will be a prerequisite for analysis. So the scope of our course can be, we can see it here in this. So how we make what is the best guideline analysis and what is the best guideline for design. And in the analysis, so far, what we focus more about requirement, if you remember how we collect this requirement, and then how we make a structuring for them. And one of them, we talk about the data modeling, how we can make the modeling for the data, which means the database system. And then we go to the analysis, and then we start with the database. We finish with this. So we talk about the database, how to make the analysis for this, which means, and then how to make ER diagram, and then how we can make this logical diagram, which is before we go to the physical files in our system. And we talk about forms and the report. So forms and the report that we discussed the last time. Today we will talk about dialogue and interface, and the last topic will be distributed and internet system. It's more about whenever you have a distributed system. Maybe this topic will be more about the network infrastructure. So people who are familiar with networking can more it will be more easier when we discuss this matter. So we are here. Next time we will discuss this, and will be last topic we will talk about in this course, in this case. So when we talk about interface, from this word interface, so interface, when we talk interface, it is the first thing that a person can see it when he's dealing with a system. So if you go to a shop, your first interface will be the cashier maybe, or the customer service. So this is the first thing you can see it before you go to the upper or go internal in the menu to talk with the management, or you go to meet a manager who whatever it is, a managerial position for this person. There will be an assistant or secretary. It's your first interface to deal with it. So here, when we talk about the interface of a system, so we are talking about forms, we are talking about reports, we talk about menu, we talk more about the interaction sequence, which is the dialogue sequence that we talk about it. So when we talk about the design for this, it's more focused, as we did before in the form, how information is provided, which means that the data entry, how it should be, and later how the information is being retrieved, as so far what I have already said. So the dialogue talk more about the sequence. We are talking about the dialogue, which means that there's this interaction, because sometimes, and this is, by the way, it's happened, even though sometimes it's happened with big systems. You can feel that the dialogue sequence is somehow not an easy one. You will get lost. So you go to search, you start here, and then you will go to another screen, and then you'll go to search for another option. You have to open fourth screen. So the sequence, it will not be somehow an easy sequence, and it's not be uncomfortable sequence. So dialogue sequence talk about more about this sequence of the interaction, how it will be. When we talk about the interface, the standalone interface, we talk more about how this data will be sent, if it is more talking about our forms, or we talk about menu if you are going to select different options, and how we can going to retrieve this data. And we focus more how it's to be more friendly to the user and more easier to the user. And the format should be based on special standard that some of this format we have already discussed in the last lecture. Just a note for you, it's out of this lecture. I know that some students will see that there's a lot of different theoretical part in this course, even though I do my best to keep focus more about the practical part. This is why maybe I will go to the object-oriented use cases and the ER diagram and go deeply for it. However, as I said, that people later who work with the system design, still they don't have enough information what is the best design and what is the guideline that you have to consider. So maybe you can see that it's so theoretical one, it's a lot of talking here and we talk blah 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 blah, but really these guidelines have a very 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 high impact later, because one of the main let's say one of the main criteria to evaluate a system, how friendly is this system. So when I talk about how friendly it is, I'm talking about interaction. I'm talking about design. So even though now you can see there are predefined designs that you can use it, but the big question is which one is the best in this case. Some people, they will learn this by experience because they have to work with different systems, and then they, okay, go ahead and by time he can see that this industry need to have this guideline and this format. But if you start working with a company, this company will not lose some client because you don't have enough experience of this. So experience, take this advice from me. Experience come after knowledge, which means you should have a knowledge first, and then you can practice this knowledge. And maybe when you practice this knowledge, you can understand more what knowledge is, what this knowledge talking about. So you can't start making experience without a knowledge, because it will be time consuming and you will pay so much effort about it, and you will get a bad reputation about it if you don't do it. So, okay, I can go start and put this menu like this and put this text box like this, and then, okay, which one is good? No, not like this. So yeah, it is fashion, but this is not like fashion when there you will be somebody that you are drawing or sketching a drawing that talk about your internal emotion. No, you are building a system that will be used by professional people to solve a systematic problem that they're facing in their business. So this is why you have first to focus to get knowledge, and then with experience you practice this knowledge, and maybe you can understand more this knowledge and you can expand your knowledge. So this is because people will sometimes talk so much theory is tough, so much theory is annoying, so much theory is boring. However, you need theory. But sometimes maybe people, they have to give courses. I'm not talking about, I'm not talking only just about instructor in general, trainer, whatever it is, give courses. Maybe sometimes, okay, it is boring, so much theory about it. So we have to make a balance. Give theory with some practice, but doesn't we have so much practice and avoid theory? Because in this case, there will be a shortage in the knowledge, and the person who is going to work in this domain will start learn try and error, and the try and error is consuming. And this will give a bad image for this person who will start with a new domain, making this approach and work about try and error. So return back to here. So interfaces and dialog design specification. So if we are talk about interfaces and dialog, so far interface, it is the screen which can be contain different either form or menu, whatever it is, we will see about it, this interaction, how it can be different interaction method. So, and we will have the dialogue that talk about the sequence of interaction. So when we are going to design them, we should first consider in our specification the narrative overview. Shane, are you still here?
Yeah.
I'm talking so much today, yeah?
Yeah, I'm listening now.
I haven't talked 2 weeks, so I should talk more now. Okay, Shane, I have a question. Help me.
Yeah.
So when we talk about narrative overview, so can you, based on what is written here, can you clarify it for us what you mean by narrative overview as a specification for interface and dialogue?
Narrative overview. I would say it encompasses the user experience. So
Yeah, no. Let first go step before. So interface and dialogue, it's somehow I know that we are still at the beginning of the lecture, but you are now somehow can understand what I mean by interface and dialogue. You can?
Yeah.
So interface, this is all interaction that the user will do it with the system. It can be a form, it can be a report, it can be a menu. It can be whatever interaction, maybe by voice it has to interact with the system. So all interaction with the system can be seen as interfaces, using different interfaces. And dialogue, we talk about the sequence. So now that if I want to make specification, which means that I want to start designing the interfaces and to see how I can make the dialogue. So I should have some specification for this. I'm dealing with a system, so I need to have specification for the interfaces and the dialogue. So now, what different, let's say, different issues we have to consider and when we go ahead and make the specification. First one, it is a narrative overview. So what do you mean about narrative overview when we talk about specification of interfaces and dialogue? Is it more clear now to you?
Okay. Yeah.
So you can see here, talk about here environment. So the first issue we have to consider when we talk about interfaces and dialogue design, what is the specification? Because we should have a specification before we will go start implementation or start designing this implementation or implementing this design. So we are this system for whom? What is the ecosystem that will use it? Who will use it? Okay, what is the environment? Why is this environment talking about the environment? Sometimes let me give you an example. Shane, are you familiar what I mean by point of sale system?
Point of sale?
Yeah.
Not really.
So when you go to Superstore, Walmart, whatever it is, there is a cashier there, and then it has to make a billing for you and has to scan the product, yeah?
Okay.
So this is a point of sale system.
Okay.
So sometimes if you are building a point of sale system, and you are building a point of sale system maybe for a company that don't have shoppers. So like it is an office. You have a company that work with trading, and maybe this company will have 3 to 4 clients or 10 to 15 clients per day. And each client, you have to open a file for it and then make an invoice for it, or so much detail. So, however, when you deal with another point of sale that has a huge traffic like Walmart Superstore, so designing this point of sale, you have to have in the first interface different shortcut that will be used by most of the customers. This client or employee will not go to search for different options. Like for example, he want to go ahead and make this collecting the point for you. This is reward point. So he doesn't have to go to different screens and to pick the option to scan this reward. There should be a shortcut he has to deal with it. Why? Because the environment is talking about a high volume customers, and there are somehow typical activities done by most of the customers there. There are maybe some details will be done with some customer that they normally was not, or some activities that will not be done by other customers. So in this case, when you start making this specification, before you start designing, you talk about this environment. We are talking with a shop that has a high volume of a client. So we have to take care of this, and we should know what is the shortcut that can be used by most of the customers to put it in the main interface in this case. Is it more clear now, Shane?
Yeah, I think so. I understand.
Okay, perfect. So the narrative overview talk about what is the interface name or different interfaces you deal with it, who will be the users, and what is the activities, which mean that what he has to do using this interface, and the environment. The environment, very important. And then this is talk about description about the environment, description about the business. And then we will go to another part when we talk about specification. We'll talk now about the form and the report and the dialog sequence. So the form and the report we have already discussed before. It will be part from the interface because 95% of the interfaces will be forms or reports. There are other forms, we will talk about other interactions, or other interfaces. However, when we talk about systems, especially on database, a system has to deal with a database which is more oriented to business. This is our focus in this system, this course. Most of our forms and reports. So after we start with the narrative overview specification, we'll go to the form and report design and the dialog sequence. As I said, when I talk about dialogue, you know what is meant by dialogue. In English, we said dialogue, that means two persons, they are communicating and there is a conversation. One talk and the other will listen, then the other will talk and the other will listen. So there is a sequence of communication. When we talk here about dialogue sequence, and we'll see it later during the lecture, we talk about the sequence of this interaction or different screen that we will have in the system. What is the best sequence? Because maybe you will have 4 or 5 screens, but you should know first what is the main screen and what is the next screen would be, and what is the third screen, what is the fourth screen. For example, if I talk about a POS system, so the first screen, as I said, would be the main shortcut that talk about the billing for most of the customers. And maybe if the other screen will talk about more, if there is so much detail, he has to put it about this customer, about the report point. And maybe the third screen talk about the employee himself. There's some information about the shift, whatever it is. Because maybe this screen will not go, maybe this screen, the employee will go once or twice per day. So he doesn't have to have it at the first part, or he can do it later, and this will not affect the sequence when he has to communicate with a customer. So you don't have to put this at the first one. Just talk about the employee detail. He wants to enter when he starts and when he will leave, maybe. So this is a dialogue sequence, somehow very related, by the way, to the environment, which is based on the narrative overview that we have already written. Talk about describing the environment where the system will work. And at the end, we will make some assessment. There should be a testing and assessment for this that has what sometimes we always people who work with software development industry, there is a rule say that who's going to make an assessment is not the same person who has already done the work. There will be assessment criteria, maybe we'll talk about it now, but in very general. And then not the same person is going to make this assessment. Somebody else has to make this, because if you have already done this work, you feel that it's perfect. So you can see where's the gaps and what was the problem. And normally who will make the assessment for this system? We are talking about the business modeling of the system. We're not talking about the technical. We're not talking make assessment for the code, or see the bug on the system or the security of the system. No, we're talking about the assessment of the design. So in this case, we need more people that they are from the business environment to see, you as a cashier, for example, do you like the system? You as a manager, do you like this system? And then you need some people that they are from the business environment to make this testing and environment to see, is this design what would be expected based on the narrative overview that we have already done, based on this environment and based on this system usage. And don't forget that we have already made the requirement structuring at the beginning. But the requirement structuring at the beginning talk more about different activities. And there is a part talk about the database design itself and the analysis. So at that level, we talk about different activities in the system, but don't talk so much about the design or the interfaces. So a testing and assessment, or in the specification, we have to agree how we are going to make this assessment. This is an overview of our document for specification. So we talk about first about narrative overview, interface design, testing, assessment. As I said, you make it, this is an outline for you with different points that you have to consider when you make this documentation for the specification. So interactive methods and devices. So what different interactive methods we have in any computer computer system. So interface is a method which user interacts with information system. A method. One of them is a form. So what we will have a command line. So this is most probably used by professional people. Like I think that most of you who work with, for example, shell scripting in Linux, you are going now Linux, like Ubuntu or different version from them, they have a graphical user interface, but so far, not very long. So a couple of years ago, we don't have an interface for Linux. When we have to work with Linux system, we have to go as a professional, we have to work with shell scripting. And still, even though the graphical user interface work with more shell scripting, because people who, this is one, yeah, from the beginning, for example, when talk about operating system now, people will always say, okay, Windows is more graphical, is more friendly as a graphical user interface. However, Linux is more secure. And this is why most of the web server database system, it will be based on the Linux. Why? Because it's more secure. Okay, this is why people who work with operating system development, we said, okay, whenever you will have more graphical user interface, more interfaces, graphical interfaces, you will have less security. So the command line, it will be more secure comparing to the graphical user interfaces. So yes, Windows from the beginning, it's named Windows interface. This was the main one. I think that the first Windows system, when what was published to the community tens of years ago, the main advantage was comparing to other operating system was Windows interfaces. But with time, it seems that these interfaces, they are, yes, normal customers, which in the normal user, not the professional user, they need it, or they can't communicate with the computer, or they can't interact with the computer. However, also, this will make less security. So we can see that Windows have many security bugs compared to the history of Windows and the history of Linux. Because as simple as this is more oriented to graphical interfaces, and this is more oriented to command line, and to focus more on the security. So we have a command line, we have a menu, can be as interaction, because menu doesn't relate to the form. You will have different menus, and now we will have a lot of different design of the menus. We have a form, we have object-based, like when this is object-based used by, also in Windows you can see it, you can have different objects or graphical objects, and then we have natural language. In our book, maybe doesn't talk so much about natural language, but now it is this natural language is now natural language processing. It's now somehow bombing. That most of the devices now, they are enabled that you can communicate using your smartphone, your computer. You have a special devices now, like Amazon has its own, Google it has its own, that you can talk with these devices using your own voice, and then you can send different commands. Still, we talk now about AI, machine learning, and natural language processing. Still, there is a lot of work to be done by researchers. However, this is start to be somehow wide use interaction, which no need to go ahead and click in a form, whatever. I can talk with the machine. The more smart the machine it is, the more it can interact using my voice in this case, or using natural language. So command line, I have already talked about it. This is, we can see it here on Linux, for example, that this interface, like here, when you make a copy from file to another one, you write a command rather than make a drag and drop like now in Windows. So you can use special command lines. And we not only in the Linux, I don't know if you work with MS-DOS, so CDDIR. So I remember working with DOS when I was a teenager. I have my first computer when I was 13 years old. Yes, I was in the 7th grade at that time. So at that time, it was pure DOS. It was no Windows at that time. It was 486 processor. So I can still remember this command line, how they were at that time. So if you want to deal with a file, and you have to move a file and then open a file, and then you want to run, maybe it was some games, a very small games at that time. So we have to work with MS-DOS command line. So the DOS was our interface. It was the initial interface before we have a graphical one from the Microsoft at that time. We have the MS-DOS, Microsoft DOS. So it was we have MS-DOS at that time to have a command line interaction with the computer. Let's talk about menu. So we said there is a command line, there's an interaction, we can do it, and then we will have a menu. Maybe when we talk about command line, there is nothing we can do it from design point of view. Let's talk more about a command line, or if you are building a system, very professional system, that you are asked to build a command line. However, in the menu interaction, all the system should have a menu in this case. And we will have different menus. So we will have a simple single menu, we'll have a pop-up menu, drop-down, hierarchies of menus, different hierarchies. So here, for example, this is, I think most of you have seen this. This is, you go to Google in your account and make a settings. So it is a single menu because there is each single task you can go ahead, and so each line will have an option, you can choose it. So this is a single menu. It depends. When you talk about the settings, so this is the whole page is a single menu talking about this different option, how you can make the settings. Pop-up menu, we are talking more, and pop-up menu talk more about, you can see this in Windows. Pop-up, which means that you are in the same level, in the same position. So if you go to, it's not like drop down that you see it here, drop down, then you will go down in the screen. Pop up, you are somehow in the same level. You pop from this level another menu. Drop down, we name it that we go down your screen comparing to this. So pop up and drop down, it's up to you where to use it. I have a question. Do you believe when we have to use a pop-up menu and drop-down menu? Andrew, I like to hear you, if you can. You got my question?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of when exactly you would. I guess for various shortcuts could be good on a pop-up menu.
I agree.
And then more in some program, more like main functions would be in a drop-down menu.
Yeah, and another point that when we talk about, for example, if you have a full screen, you can make a drop-down menu because it will not take a huge portion.
Yeah, that's right.
But so in this case, you can go ahead, make a menu and make a drop-down menu. However, if you are talking about, for example, you are now in your desktop and you're still working in your desktop in different places, and then you want now to activate special option. So for sure, we'll make a pop-up. So we'll take a small portion from the screen where there already the cursor it is. So in this case, we'll go to the pop-up menu. So it depends now about the environment that we are dealing with it. Okay, thank you so much, Andre.
No problem.
So menu hierarchy, so just, we agree, all of us, that there is a menu hierarchy, that this depends about, you should agree about this hierarchy and you should do it somehow, because sometimes you have to deal with a system. We'll have a modules and sub-modules and sub-modules. So you have to consider this is in your menu hierarchy, especially when you talk about a huge system like an ERP system. So an ERP system, we will have modules and sub-modules. In this case, you have to consider the structure of the system in your menu in this case. Before I will go to the guidelines of the menu in general, menu design, this is the main aim when we talk about talking about menu. So I know that there are now huge template of menu, and this depends about which platform you are talking with it. So if you are working with a website or a web-based system, there will be different like CSS, JavaScripts, maybe menus, and then you can just use them. Again, using a predefined template without any tuning based on the narrative overview that you have, it will be bad sometimes. It's like the same student, when you ask student to go to make a research and create a project, he can go copy paste on the internet because he see the topics are similar and go ahead and say, this is my project. And then you will get a bad grade because now, yeah, students simply they can search and instructors simply can search. So instructor can catch from the student where he got it. So some students said, okay, we can play around it and we go ahead and do it. And so the same what you have already done, your instructor can do it. So however, this is what I'm saying, that using a predefined one without making your own tuning, it's bad. Because this predefined one, that's template, is being used for sometimes, even though it will be generic, but the person that has already developed based on a narrative overview in his mind. So you should consider the guideline that will be somehow mapped about your own narrative in this case. Like for example, organization, which you talk about consistent. Okay, you have a drop-down list. You got the drop-down list as a JavaScript one. You are dealing with a web page, a website system, web-based system. So sometimes you can, as I said, you will have an option in this menu that is not related to different options. So you should take care about the consistent, about how they are much consistent, the different options in this menu, about the main topic. And this can be more done when your hierarchy is more clearer to you. And highlighting, it's very important, highlighting, because we will have always an access control in different middle and huge system. What I mean by access control, that different users have different access. So this person that he has already, sometimes it's good that in this menu, you will make a dim for this, to let this user know that this option exists, but he doesn't have this access. You have to ask about this access. If you didn't put this option for him without being dimmed one, maybe he thought that this system doesn't have this option. So highlighting menu, it will be a very good idea in this case, how to highlight this menu. So it's very important that you highlight the option that really have it based on, again, the narrative overview that you have it. The lens. This is very important because you don't have to have a huge amount of options, the same one. Go ahead and make good hierarchy, and then you make breakdown for different submenus to make it easier to the user. And you have to balance, not to have so much submenus, because we will not go from one to one to one to find what he has to do it. And sometimes you have to mix between pop-up and pop-up menu, and in the same time use drop-down. So, and now there are a lot of menus. They made left menus, whatever it is. So the length of the menu and the length of the sub-menu is very important how you consider this. Form interaction. So form, I will not talk so much about it because we have already talked about it before. So one of the interaction to be form. And this normally allow users to enter data. And normally the form here will be somehow related to what you have already in your database system, because it is data that the user is going to save it, or he is going to submit data to retrieve another data. So we have already discussed before this guideline, so I will not repeat it again. So what form, it is one of the interactions that can be done with the system. It's one of the interfaces with the system. Object-based, we talk about different icons, and normally we will have it like here when we have an option interface, like Windows option interface. So we will have icon-based one, and each icon we name it as an object, and it can be activate or deactivate any option that the user is searching for. The last point in interaction is about natural language interaction. Kevin? Are you here, Kevin?
Yeah.
Are you still concentrating with us, or a lot of blah blah talking today?
Kind of a lot of talking, but I'm still listening.
Okay, we have to talk because this talk about more advanced design guidelines, so we have to discuss different guidelines.
Yeah.
So, natural language processing interaction. What do you know about this?
It's conversation between two humans.
You are talking about interaction, which means that a human interacting with a device.
Okay.
So, natural language interaction. What do you know anything about this? Do you have iPhone or Android? What do you use?
Use an iPhone.
So, what can you talk with your iPhone?
With Siri, yes.
Yeah, with Siri. This girl that no one know her.
Yeah, no one
Yeah.
knows.
So what you are doing when you talk with this nice girl?
Assist in doing task.
Yeah. So what you are doing? You are talking with a computer. In this case, you will be crazy or what?
Say it again.
I said you are talking with the computer, then you are crazy now or what?
No.
Okay. So the point that you are interacting with your device, but rather than clicking a button or go to click any option or click any form, you are interacting using your own voice or using your own language.
Yeah.
So this is natural language interaction.
Okay.
So one of the interfaces or one of the interaction with the device can be nowadays used using natural language. Do you know more about it? Have you already read some articles about how this can be done? What is the domain? What talk about? Do you have some motivation to read about it, or you can feel that you are anxious to know more about it, or you haven't done before?
About natural language interaction?
Yeah, or natural language processing or natural language interaction. Have you read in this domain or something like this, or you have never?
No, not yet so far.
So based on our conversation now, so for us it is natural language interaction. It is using the natural spoken language to interact with a device. You agree?
Yeah.
So now how this can be done? So how the device can understand when you said, okay, open my mail. How can the device understand that you have to, as if you are clicking your Outlook? Do you have an idea about this?
It's kind of like an application, right?
Yeah, it's an application, but this application would be based on special science in this case.
Yeah.
So because it has to process the voice to understand what is the command needed and to execute this command. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
So have you already heard about artificial intelligence, machine learning?
Yeah, machine learning, of course.
Okay, perfect. Tell me about machine learning then.
So machine learning is I'm not really too sure about it, but a lot of people was talking about how it can interact with people and started to learn from them and just grow by time.
Wait. It's how to interact with the people who will going to learn. The machine, you mean?
Like the machine, yes.
Okay. So you mean that the machine learning from the people?
Yes, and we learn from them as well.
Not so much accurate.
I'm not too sure.
So the machine, if the machine want to interact with the people, to learn with the people, so it should have a mean of communication to learn, to go ahead and talk with the people and learn from them. Machine learning, let me tell you in a simple way what I mean by machine learning. Machine learning, it is a science that let the machine understand about special data, how it can process, and then later when it have such kind of data, what is the decision to take. So you as a human being, you Kevin, when you born here to this life, yeah, now you start walking, and then you will go maybe to some places that is harmful at home, and your parent will say, no, don't go there. For example, whatever a place can be harmful there. For example, there is an electricity power supply at your home, and then your parent will say, okay, don't go there, and you as a small baby, your mind will say, will make a categorization to this place that is a harmful place. You will not do it again. You still will do it, but by time you will learn that not to do it. You agree?
Agree.
So you are learning from the environment now. And later, when you will be in another home, not like your home where you have already learned that this is a harmful place. And if there is something similar to this, like you were visiting other family, and you will not go there because you now know that this place is harmful. You have already learned this from your own home, using your parents that they have already helped you to learn this. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So this is the same what we do with machine. So we set the machine now, for example, okay, we'll tell the machine if there is a temperature, we learn the machine between 0 and 15 Celsius, for example. This means that the weather is cold. So later, when you will go ahead and tell the machine today is 10, the machine will reply to you, it is cold. Because we have already learned the machine that this is range, means this is cold. Machine learning means that let the machine understand more the data that's being inserted in this machine or the data that's being saved in this machine, and later can make different decisions. So the machine now, when we talk about natural language processing, a voice is kind of a signal data. You agree?
A signal data, yeah.
Yeah, so voice, it's a signal data. When we are talking now, we are sending a signal. So with time, this signal with different frequency, because you start learning the machine that when there is, you should know that, for example, my English accent, not like your English accent. So if you are going to deal with a device, the device should understand if we say the same word, that this word, this word. Play. I will say play, not the same, and not the same way that you say play. So in this case, because we are going to give a huge amount of different signals, and we will tell the device that this signal and this signal from Kevin and Ismail is talking about to play. So, and then we will give another signal talk about to play. So the computer will have a huge variety of the play word using different signals. And later when we will have a new signal, which will compare between different signal and we'll see hear this. And now your device will see what is the most similar signal to this, to the new signal that it has, and then we'll go and pick the label for the signal. It is a play, then this is a play. This user is telling me play. This is what I mean by machine learning.
Okay.
Have you got it?
A little bit, but yeah, it was useful.
16 seconds to know about machine
around
learning.
that.
Okay, so it is a big science, machine learning. So it's not here to talk about it. But however, people they are using now for interaction. Still, it is not somehow very advanced, because sometimes you will talk with your nice lady at the iPhone and will do something that not what you have already expected.
Exactly.
And sometimes it will do what you have already expected, because still this data data that is being processed and being learned by your machine. Time by time, it will have more data, we will learn more, and then your machine can deal with different variety of the data. It needs to be learned more. So as the mind is doing that, with time it will learn more, it will have more knowledge, and then, for example, if there is, I'm sorry that I talk so much about this, but I think this is a nice topic you as software engineer should know about it. Suppose that now we have a blind person. He never seen the car. So if he sees, and then now he got a surgery and he can see. So if he see it as the first time, he will not know this is a car because he never seen before.
Yeah.
So now he can know that this object is a car. And then later, if you will have, for example, another object similar to it, like a truck, he will say, okay, it seemed like a car, but in another way. Because his mind start learning, and then he can go, but when he has to learn with a new thing, he has to learn based on what he have already learned before. So machine learning is let the machine learn like the human being, not to learn from the human being. It means that let the machine learn as the human learn. Got it, Gavin?
Yeah, got it. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. So again, it's based in artificial intelligence, and this nice discussion we did it with Kevin. So this take about artificial intelligence, as I said, and we make a discussion with Kevin now about artificial intelligence, that your device will learn more about different voices. What does it mean? Having different variety of these voices, and to have a nice natural language processing interaction, then this means that you will have more. You will have a more varieties. You have to deal with it. Common interaction devices, no need to talk about it. So we have a keyboard, mouse, joysticks, touch screen, light pen, graphical tablet, voice, as we talk about it now. Structuring data entry. Structuring data entry means that, okay, data entry that is going to be, the user has to do it, to enter it. Based on which format he has to do it. He is going to make a date, then I have to take care of this in the form. Is going to make, for example, sometimes we have to give a format examples. You just go ahead and see. Then you, especially now when you go to the web-based one, you can see that there are example what is the data entry that expected from you. So the structure of the data entry, and you want to control this data entry is very important to the user. When you talk about controlling the data entry, you have to reduce data entry errors. Why? Or this is part of the validation. Mason, are you still here? Mason, can you hear us? You see, Mason is not anymore here. So what about you?
Hello.
Oh, perfect. Here too. So we talk about data validation or data entry validation before we go more deep in it. So normally, why we need to have a data validation?
Okay, so like in the previous step when we talked about like the different forms and all that can be used, like in certain fields, suppose your name, like we just have to enter the text. So if like someone like by mistake enters like some numbers or something, so the system itself can validate it that the provided input was wrong. So like numbers are not allowed in names. So such as that. That can be used like in a variety of stuff. So suppose like the mobile number, same way.
Yeah, especially when you deal with, we talk about the narrative environment, we deal with a mobile number to a special place.
Yeah.
So in this case, you know, for example, in Canada, there are a special number of numbers should be for all mobile numbers, so it not be less more, should not be less or more. I have a question for you.
Yeah.
So if we talk about data validation, so should be this done, we have to consider it when we consider a form design, and we have to put this restriction within the form itself, or we can do it in the system before we enter the data, and then we can make a validation there before the data is being entered on the server side in this case. What do you think?
Well, the thing is, I think it would be better like if we like incorporated within the form itself, because like once we submit all the data, then like once it goes into the system, and the system has to validate the whole thing and then get back to the user again saying that the provided input was wrong. However, if it was incorporated within the form itself, then like at that very instant, like suppose the provided input was wrong, the feedback can also be provided.
I totally agree. Suppose that you will have, for example, you have a company, you will have a manager, and they have 3 assistants, and this manager has to make a final approval for all documents. So if all documents go directly to the manager, he has to waste so much time, double check all the documents, and then the manager has a time limitation. So however, if each assistant makes a first validation, there'll still be some error, but it can be catched by the manager, and the manager can use his time in a better way. Do you agree?
Yeah.
So the same when you talk about a system and a server, when you talk about a client-server system, that most of the systems are client-server, especially the cloud-based or the web-based. So the server, it's somehow, the time of the server is costly, even though it sometimes costs by time because it's pay-as-you-go, for example. Most of the, now we have a pay-as-you-go, so it costs money. And it costs time because the server has to deal with all the client requests. So rather than sending requests and then the server has to send again, telling that this doesn't obey the format. So we should consider this when you make a form design or an interaction design that doesn't take from the user what not expected as a form. And there is another reason also, Mason. Can you think about another reason rather than that get a less activity to the server? This is one of the reasons, that not to make an overload work in the server one, that we can do it in the client part in the form restriction before we go to the server system. And there is another reason to make a form validation and consider this when you make a form and an interface rather than the overloaded usage of the system, of the server. If there is another reason, you can think about it.
Well, like this data that we're like entering into the forms and everything, it's usually used for something else as well. So if this data is validated at this step itself, like there won't be any other problems encountered in the next step.
Yeah, but if this depends in the dialogue, which means that we talked with that there is something dialogue sequence. Let's talk about the sequence, not more of the form validation. But what about security? Suppose now you have a form and you ask the user to enter, and then there is a bad guy who's a hacker, and then in this form text it will send a code, and this code will reach your server and can be executed. You agree?
Yeah.
So for security issue also, so we have to make this data enter to be sure we can get only text data, we don't get a harmful data, because some data can be harmful in this case. So in this case, we have also make a form validation to be sure to be secure.
Yeah.
That, for example, if you go to a security place, so the security guys will be sure that there is no harmful tool you will have before you enter. The same here. So before he has the data to be entered to your system, from the interface, you should take care that there is no harmful data. And then if the user has asked to be entered tax as a first name, so he will not put special character like that can be used in programming language. Do you agree?
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I like this discussion with you guys. I make this discussion because to make it more clear and people who are going to watch this video, they can understand more the concept. So I'm sorry if I'm bothering you. Okay, so now let's talk about validation tasks and techniques. So validation, as we said from the beginning, that we need to make a validation to ensure that the data are the proper type. So this is what we're talking. What I'm talking with Mason was about validation. Validation of the data. So this data is based on special format. Yes, no. This is alphanumeric. We don't have to have special like tags or something like this. That can be programming language. Expected value and missing data, because sometimes you need, and you should, this is very important when you create a form, especially in forms, that if there is a must data that should be entered and you need it to process the application with this person, so you should not let the form be submitted without this person will enter these data. So these data will be somehow compulsory data that the user has to enter them. And this should be in the narrative overview. I'm retaining also narrative overview, which means that you should, in your specification, you should have already mentioned what is the compulsory data, and then that's the must, that should be must, or the user must enter this data in the system in this case. Pictures and template. Yes. And then standard format, one is, for example, take a special format, for example, like here, that's talking about student ID number. The range, it's all about form validation. Size, values, like when we talk about, for example, special format, talking about a postcode, or talking about, for example, whatever it is, a special format based on the environment, narrative overview, environment that we're dealing with it. Dialogue. So dialogues talk more about dialogue. We said talk about more about the sequence, of different screens or different interaction. Before that, we talk about, there are three main steps that involve in dialogue. First, agree in the sequence. What is a sequence? And then we will build a prototype. If you remember, when we talk about form, we said we can build a wireframe, and I agree that always we should have a wireframe. And we talked about there are different, the software can be used to build a wireframe. And then in your system, you have to consider building a prototype, which means prototype talking about, not talking about the form design. Just you can make a screen, you can see it here. Maybe here, like here. So you can see that there is, for example, the ID for this display, the name, and the reference number to return the display, which means now when you are going to build the sequence, you go to see what is different. You have to give a different ID and name for this screen or interface. And then you build a prototype to be sure that the user can see the whole image and get the final approval. We go implementing your system. So, okay, you know this form, how it should be designed, and this interaction, how it should be, if it is, for example, voice interaction, or it is interaction like a report, whatever it is, the interaction type. However, who's come first and who's come next, and how we return to this one, then we should draw a sketch talking about, like, it's like a flow chart about the whole system in this case. And then assess usability. Now again, we talk about the sequence. We don't talk a special form. The special form, we can talk about usability. About this sequence is usable, is friendly, is easy to do it, is that the user will like to do it. As we said, when we talk about POS in high volume or high traffic shops, you have to have some shortcuts and interfaces before one interface in order not to waste time. Because wasting time means that somehow you'll make a problem with the client, and then you will have a less outcome, daily outcome at your work in this case. This we have already said. Guideline for designing human-computer dialogue should be consistent. Error handling, reverse error handling, which means that suppose there is an airplay, there is an error handling, there will always be a place you can press help or can go to the main menu, whatever it is, that I can deal with the error that happened here. Especially that most of the don't consider sometimes that, okay, we have already designed, but if there is an error happen for a special reason, so how we are going to interact with this, or how we're going to deal with this. I said that when we talk about building this sequence, this is what I said here, that we have to have top, middle, bottom, and talk about the diagram that resemble this dialogue, or talk about what is a reference. This is just for design, this reference, by the way. It's not for programming. Name and description and reference number of the return display in this case. So here, we talk about here more about this is, as I said, a flow chart. This is a dialog sequence that I'm talking about. And some of you will have iteration. You should know about it. And sometimes you will reach a place that after this displays, he has a selection, which means that he has different options. The same in this interface, you have different shortcut, different button for different screens. So he can choose one of them. If you choose one of them, he can return this. So the whole sequence of different interaction. But this is a point of view Valley Furniture system that we have already from the beginning based on the block of our course. So first you will have a login, then you will have a main menu, then you will have an order status, sales person information, reports, individual customer information, then you select customer. So you see, we are talking about the sequence of different interfaces you will have. It is very important, really, it's very important. This dialog, you make a prototype for it, like a flow chart, before you implement your system. Because it will affect the friendly user of the system, by the way. Building prototype, it's like using a wireframe. So again, I'm talking about prototype for the sequence, not talking about prototype for a special interaction or special interface. This is, we have already discussed it when we talk about form, for example. I'm talking about building, this is a prototype that you can deal with it, about different flowchart, how it will be in this case. Last but not least, about graphical user interfaces. Graphical user interfaces, it is an interface that can have a form, it can have a menu, all of them in the same place, like here. So this is normally what is nowadays interaction or interface. So an interface, a graphical, we name it graphical user interface, which it will have a menu, it has a form, and now you see, for example, there are many hints or there are many guidelines we have to consider here. For example, here that use a check marks to indicate that a command will be executed. Right arrow shows an item lead to a submenu. So we have to use different graphics when we deal with this interface. This is a typical nowadays interface that will include forms and maybe menus, and sometimes it will have a shortcut for another report. So when I talk about graphical user, we all of us name here graphical user interface, graphical user interface. So here what I mean by graphical interface, that means we use different graphics to highlight different usage of this interface in this case. Most probably people that have to work with web programming, they know about, let's suppose like CSS, styling, and they have to consider different style issues when you have to design this. But again, I'm not talking about how you implement this or you use different library, but what is the different guidelines you should have in your mind when you design this. This is a whole, we are done today. So today we learned how to explain the process design interface and dialogue, apply general guidelines. And we talk about design human and computer dialogues that we have already talked about in graphical user interface and guidelines for interface and dialogue. To sum up, we talk about two main parts about the interface, different types of interfaces, and each interface, what is different guidelines based on the type of this, and that we have to consider. And we discuss more what interfaces we have, we can use in our system, and then we talk about the dialogue and the sequence of this dialogue. Guys, tell me, do you have any question for me? Or, it's a long time, you have to leave now. Shane?
No questions from me.
Maybe I have a question. Shane?
Yeah.
Maybe I have a question.
You have a question?
Yeah. No, well, tell me about the project. Everything okay? Have you started with a group about it?
Personally, I haven't started on my project yet. I've been trying to deal with a lot of the things going on. So I think today I'm gonna get my group going.
Yeah,
Message
so
everybody.
Yeah, I'm asking you this question because one of the group members should initiate the communication. Because all of them, they will be waiting. Who will start first?
Yeah, I planned on sending email today to everybody.
Please do it. All of you do it, please. Because time is flying. So we have to finish this before the end of this semester. So the end of semester will be, I think that it will be 10th of December. So less than 2 weeks more. If you have any question, you can just drop me email, and like always, you can join the virtual office hour. Guys, thank you so much. If you don't have any question, I need 3 thumbs up to leave, or I will stay, and you will stay. Quick thumbs up, not like the beginning one. Take care. Have a nice day, yeah? All take care. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Have a good day, everyone.